Alright. Who's ready for the next Star Wars adventure? Yeah, we're talking about the Bad Batch series, which recently finished airing with a surprisingly bittersweet ending. And I know that you're excited to know more about it. So without further ado, let's get started. The series picks up right where the Clone Wars series ended, carrying the story through the aftermath of Order 66 and the rise of the Galactic Empire. But it's not just any old bunch of clones we're following. Oh, no. We're talking about Clone Force 99, an elite squad of defective clone troopers whose mutations make them different from the rest. These guys are so unique that most of the batch managed to resist Emperor Palpatine's Order 66. So now, Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Crosshair, Echo, and our mysterious girl Omega are on the run as they try to escape from the clutches of the Imperial grip. So sit back, relax, grab your popcorn as we start with episode 1 of the Bad Batch series, Aftermath. Our series starts with a monologue of the aftermath as we see the Jedi Master Depa Billaba along with her clone captain fighting as they wait for much needed backup. Right then, the Jedi Master's Padawan Caleb Doom arrives and informs about the reinforcements who he remarks are quite extraordinary. And in comes Clone Force 99. They waste no time in pushing back those droids and finish off the droid army in no time. Hunter, the leader of the Bad Batch, has a quick chat with the Jedi Master, and she agrees to launch a counterattack. Defective? More like perfectly imperfect. They're the best. As Caleb goes with the Bad Batch, he senses something is wrong as the clones start attacking Billaba after Order 66 is issued. Talk about a plot twist. Seeing his master, Caleb runs to save her, but she tells him to leave, as the Bad Batch also receives the order to kill the Jedis.
Yeah, I heard that too. What's Order 66?
I am not certain.
So our boy makes a run for it, with Hunter and Crosshair hot on his trail. They find the boy, and Crosshair takes a shot at him. Whoa, calm down there, Crosshair. Well, it's not just me that's freaking out, even Hunter's pissed. But Crosshair's like, good soldiers follow orders. They find Caleb again, and our boy with his fancy lightsaber defeats Crosshair very quickly. However, Hunter follows him and tries to persuade the kid, but Caleb's not having it as he leaps to the other side of a waterfall. That's a really good jump. Whoa. Just then, Crosshair shows up and Hunter lies, saying Caleb didn't make the leap, but Crosshair isn't buying it. The group returns to the clone facility on Camino, and they learn that the war is over and the Galactic Republic has been replaced by the Empire. There, they meet a young blonde-haired girl named Omega, who introduces herself as the assistant to the chief Kaminoan scientist, Nala Se. Meanwhile, Admiral Tarkin shows up at the facility and talks with the Kaminoan Prime Minister Lama Su to evaluate the clones. During a food fight, Tarkin takes a liking to the Bad Batch and wants to test their fighting skills. And oh boy, do they do a stellar job as they quickly take down the floating droids and armored training droids. Impressed by their ability, Tarkin gives them a mission to eliminate insurgents on Onderon. As the group leaves, they spot the blonde girl Omega, who comes to Hunter and warns him that Tarkin hates clones, which our hero already knows. Finally, they reach Onderon, where they start their search for insurgents, only to find that the insurgents aren't droids, they're refugees. However, Crosshair wants to complete the mission by taking them down, droids or not. But before they can do anything, they're caught red-handed by Saw Gerrera, who reveals they're refugees refusing to submit to the Empire. Before leaving, Gerrera offers the group two choices: adapt to survive, or die with the past. Hearing this, they leave not before Crosshair and Hunter argue about not carrying out orders. Right then, Hunter spots a Viper probe droid and shoots it down as they start thinking about saving Omega, after knowing that she's also a defective clone. Shortly after, they arrive at the facility and split up to find Omega, but their plan is spoiled when they're captured by the troopers, with Tarkin saying the Empire doesn't tolerate failure. He accuses Hunter and his group of treason and locks them in the same cell as Omega.
Well, the plan wasn't a total failure.
Suddenly, a trooper takes Crosshair away to be operated on, intensifying his programming since he still showed loyalty to the Empire during his mission. Meanwhile, Tech realizes their cell is modified and tells Wrecker to hit the weak spot to escape. After some tries, Wrecker dislodges a panel and Omega volunteers to sneak out while they hide the damaged panel. But a trooper finds Omega missing, and before he could realize, he gets knocked out when she falls on him. After gearing up, Hunter tells Tech to power up the Marauder, while the rest go back for Crosshair. If you're wondering what a Marauder is, well, it's their spaceship. But to their surprise, they find their former comrade leading a group of troopers against the group. Seeing this, Hunter tries reasoning with his former friend, but Crosshair's having none of it. as he starts attacking. Eventually, Tech manages to fire up the Marauder, and they escape with Omega as Crosshair watches them fly away. In the cockpit, Tech asks their next plan, and Hunter says to plot a course for J-19, where a friend can help them out. Alright, the next episode, Cut and Run, starts with our heroes, the Bad Batch and Clone Girl Omega, going to meet their old friend Cut, with his friend Sue on the planet Salokami. When they arrive on the planet, Omega is surprised by the warm sun and starts playing with the dirt. Never seen a girl fascinated by seeing a pile of dirt. As they move to find Cut, Wrecker's cocky attitude activates a booby trap, and they meet the couple they're looking for. After a brief introduction, Cut asks about Crosshair, but Hunter brushes it off as it's complicated. Shortly after, Hunter and Cut go into town and find the Empire's not only seizing ships, but also making everyone get chain codes for travel.
No planetary travel without a chain code.
But I have to get on this ship!
Seeing this, Cut wants to get his family off Salokami and starts a new life, but getting those codes are nearly impossible since he's a deserter clone.
What's the purpose of this?
Back in Cut's home, Omega's playing with his kids, but she wanders too far to get the ball that she almost gets ripped apart by a Nexu creature. But before things escalate, Sue and Hunter save her, and Hunter gets super mad at Omega for disobeying him. While Omega cries looking at the amulet, Tech and Echo come up with this crazy plan to infiltrate the Imperial impound. And how do you do that? It's simple. By letting the authorities seize the ship. Genius. And risky. I mean, super risky. Come on, it's your ship. But little do they know, Omega is already on the ship. After knowing their crazy idea, Hunter shouts at his teammates for not being careful. They reach the impound where Tech and Echo get the codes, but can't send them to Hunter and the Loquain family. Seeing this, Omega takes the chain codes and rushes towards the family. Not before encountering a bunch of bucketheads, which Wrecker handles perfectly.
Tech accidentally made 5 discs instead of 4.
You didn't tell her?
After reuniting with Hunter, he drops a bombshell that the extra code was for Omega so that she could leave with the Loquains, so she could have a normal childhood maybe. Hearing this, Omega is devastated, wanting to stay with Hunter and his friends. During their escape, the Bucketheads figure out something's wrong, which leads to a good old-fashioned firefight at the impound lot. Because what's a Star Wars story without a little blaster action, right? Meanwhile, Cut's family barely makes it onto the transport as the stormtroopers get distracted by the chaos caused by Hunter and his gang. Then, out of the blue, Omega appears. However, one of the troopers catches her, but Hunter quickly shoots the captor down as she manages to board just in time before they blast off for Salokami. Whew, that was a close one. Back in the ship, Omega confronts Hunter and apologizes for her mistake, saying that she wants to stay by his side. The episode ends with Hunter admitting he has a lot to learn and allowing Omega to stay if she wants. So we start off with our girl Omega chilling with her datapad while lying against a droid, Gonki. Seriously, we love Gonki. Anyway, jokes apart, Hunter comes strolling in with a protein bar.
Hit me again.
Well, that's all for now.
But just as Wrecker's about to chow down, the ship starts shaking. The crew scrambles to brace for impact, and they crash land on some random moon. Meanwhile, back on Camino, Crosshair's getting a full medical checkup, with Tarkin and Nala Se watching him like he's a lab rat. Well, he is a lab rat after all. Or, well, more like a lab robot. We're introduced to a new character, Vice Admiral Edmund Rampart, who is also the mastermind behind the chain code system who shows off the Empire's new elite squad to Tarkin.
What's wrong with you?
I must have hit my head in a crash.
Back on the moon, Echo and Tech are trying to repair the ship, but then this strange energy-sucking dragon shows up and steals the capacitor right out of the ship. Looks like it's time to call the Dragon Mother. You know Khaleesi? Yeah, whatever. So Hunter and Omega set out to find the capacitor, only to run straight into the dragon's lair. The dragon knocks Hunter's breathing mask off, but our girl Omega helps Hunter by putting that mask back on his face. With no way to call for backup, Omega goes into the dragon's nest to get the capacitor. She manages to swap the flashlight for the capacitor and reunites with Hunter. Meanwhile, the elite squad gets tasked with taking out Saw Gerrera's rebel camp on Onderon, with Crosshair leading the charge. Oh man, here we go. They storm in and quickly finish off most of the insurgents. And when one of the survivors didn't spill the beans on Gerrera's whereabouts, Crosshair just straight up offs her. But wait, it gets worse. Crosshair even turns his guns on the refugees, which is not supported by the other members. However, it looks like Crosshair is not having any BS, as he offs one of the members followed by the classic, "Good soldiers follow orders" line before ordering the execution of the remaining survivors. They report back to Camino, saying Gerrera got away, but Tarkin's still impressed with Crosshair's leadership. Finally, the Bad Batch gets their ship repaired and blasts off of the moon that they were stranded on, with Wrecker surprising Omega with her very own room and his prized doll. Omega shows immense gratitude to her new family. The next episode, Cornered, starts with our squad traveling through space to find a good hiding spot. However, Omega complains that she's been stuck on Camino and wants to travel, which is also supported by Tech, who informs them that they're low on supplies. On top of that, Echo warns the Marauder's signature is on the wanted list, and they've got to do something about that. So the boys decide to land on Pantora, not knowing what's in store for them. They reach Pantora and meet a Celestin, who approaches to scan their ship, but Wrecker steps in and the Celestin walks off after getting some credits as a bribe. However, that sneaky fella informs us about this bounty hunter who heads to kidnap Omega. Meanwhile, Hunter and Omega head to the marketplace, and Hunter tries to sell a pyro explosive for credits. But the storekeeper is more interested in buying Echo for 2,000 credits. However, Echo is not too happy with this plan, but Hunter convinces him to escape once he gets the supplies.
Fine, but not at that price. I am worth more than 2,000.
Right.
Eventually, Hunter sells Echo for 3,000 credits, only to find Omega missing, so the search is on. Omega meets the bounty hunter Fennec Shand, who offers to help her find her brothers. Right then, Hunter spots Omega with Shand, and they get ready to rumble, as Omega runs for her life. However, Hunter gets knocked out by the bounty hunter, who flees after seeing Pantoran security officers. Hunter asks Tech to tap into the CCTV system to find Omega, and he sees her going down a maintenance tunnel with Shand trailing behind her. Meanwhile, Echo escapes with his new friends to help Tech repair the ship. Down in the tunnel, Omega's delighted to see Wrecker, but Shand arrives, prompting Wrecker to jump in. However, Wrecker gets taken down with ease as Shand continues after Omega to the top of the tower. Wrecker, buddy, you definitely tried. But Hunter comes just in time as the duo escape from the place with Shand looking visibly frustrated.
This vessel is now operational.
Thanks for the help, boys.
The duo arrive at the hangar, followed by Wrecker, as they take off in the Marauder. As the engines fire up, the Celestin manager tries to stop them, but it's too late. The episode ends with Shand confronting the manager and telling him to inform her if they return. Shortly after, she informs the client about Omega's escape, as she vows to find her back. After a daring escape from the bounty hunter, our boys and Omega jump into hyperspace to meet up with Sid to figure out why the bounty hunter is after Omega. Tech hands Omega Crosshair's comlink. They land their ship in an underground hangar and start searching for Sid in a parlor. There they find a green Trandoshan who tries to play dumb, but Omega sees through the act and finds out that the Trandoshan is actually Sid.
I found Sid.
The Green Lizard takes them to her office and wants the Bad Batch to rescue a kid named Muchi in exchange for intel of the bounty hunter. They leave Omega by the ship and head towards the enemy hideout through the rocky terrain. Unfortunately, our boys get captured by the Zagarian's electric net. Shortly after, the Zagarian guard starts searching their ship, and Omega slips out through a trapdoor as she finds her brothers trapped by the Zagarians. That's when the Zagarian boss Rainey shows up and starts trash-talking about selling the clones for a nice payout.
It's getting looser.
Meanwhile, Omega comes down to save her friends, and she spots a large creature inside a cage. But just when she was about to open it, a Zagarian guard captures her and brings her to Rainey. But it's already too late as the creature bursts through the gates, and the Bad Batch uses it as a distraction to break free from the chains. Believing that the Feline girl to be Muchi, Omega tells her that they are here to take her home. However, much to everybody's surprise, the girl's father reveals that the cage creature is actually Muchi. Talk about a plot twist. As Muchi fights with Rainey's men, she's about to get whipped hard by Rainey, but in comes Hunter, who rescues her by throwing Rainey aside. Meanwhile, a Brzak starts pursuing Muchi through the ruins, but Muchi defeats the beast, which promptly flies away. After learning that Rancors follow social hierarchies, Wrecker starts fighting with Muchi. However, there's no clear winner as they both become exhausted, but Muchi drops first as Wrecker pats her to sleep.
Aw, that's a good Rancor.
They bring back Muchi to Sid, who reveals the details of the bounty hunter Fennec Shand and asks Hunter to continue working for her for money. However, Hunter's like, nah man, I'm good, and he leaves the room. Another day, another mission for the Bad Batch as they successfully retrieve the stolen lizard Ruby and deliver it to Sid. As she examines the lizard, Hunter notices a mysterious man in a hooded cloak. The crew enters her office to collect their share, but Hunter and Echo protest, as their share is not what was promised. However, Sid quickly shuts them down, saying that she has to cover their docking fees, fuel rations, blah blah blah. She even taunts them for failing the tactical droid mission.
Figure something out before you see my ugly side.
That's not her ugly side?
However, the commotion outside draws Sid and the crew's attention, only to find their former captain Rex. Soon, Wrecker joins in the party and complains about frequent headaches, which causes Rex to stay alert. He reveals that the inhibitor chips are dangerous and asks them to meet him in Braca to get rid of them.
Not mine. I don't have an inhibitor chip.
Why not? That's not fair.
The boys reach the place, and Rex guides them to the medbay to begin operating on the clones. However, Omega's afraid that she will lose Hunter and pleads to reconsider, fearing being left alone. But Hunter reassures her that everything will be alright. As Tech starts the treatment, Wrecker starts losing his control. He starts attacking the clones, including Omega. Fortunately, Rex stuns Wrecker from behind, and Tech starts operating on Wrecker again. The mission is successful, as Wrecker regains consciousness. Meanwhile, Hunter and Rex share a heartfelt conversation before Rex departs, cautioning them to stay out of trouble as he disappears into the fog. Back in Camino, Crosshair and his elite squad roll up and inform Admiral Rampart about the sudden power surge in Braca. The Admiral orders them to take out Clone Force 99, much to the dismay of Prime Minister Lama Su, who suggests capturing them alive instead. Meanwhile, on Braca, Wrecker's teaching Omega how to disarm explosives.
Cheer up, kid. I failed my first disarming test too.
Wrecker and Echo spot some scrappers, leading to a chase, where Wrecker barely avoids getting injured. They quickly defeat the scrappers, and Hunter decides to stick around and scavenge some valuable weaponry from a wrecked Jedi cruiser to pay off their debt. As they're searching, Tech and Omega find some crucial data on the bridge, but then Tech detects some Imperial ships approaching, and it's none other than their old buddy, Crosshair. Back on Camino, Lama Su and Nala Se are discussing how the Empire is threatening their contingency plan. Turns out, they're the ones who hired the bounty hunters to secure Omega. On Braca, the Bad Batch move out, hiding from Crosshair's troopers. But Crosshair figures out that they're aboard and captures them at gunpoint. Hunter tries to convince Crosshair that he's being controlled by an inhibitor chip, but Crosshair orders his men to target Omega. A gunfight starts, and the Bad Batch uses explosives to destabilize the deck, causing chaos and allowing them to escape through the engine chamber. The Bad Batch navigates the ion engine, planting explosives to disable it. But they are in for a surprise, as Crosshair is ready to activate the engines, which would incinerate them to pieces.
Crosshair wouldn't do that, would he?
However, the explosives save the boys, and both Hunter and Omega head to the ship, only to run into Cad Bane, who quickly defeats Hunter and captures Omega. The rest of the crew find Hunter wounded, and learn that Omega has been taken. The episode ends with a cliffhanger, as the boys get ready for their next mission, Save Omega. We continue where we left off on the last episode, with the Bad Batch being chased relentlessly by Crosshair. Even though Hunter is extremely reluctant to leave Omega behind, he orders a jump to hyperspace. This leaves Crosshair fuming mad as they escape. Meanwhile, Omega wakes up in a prison cell on Cad Bane's starship. A droid called Todo 360 taunts her, warning that Bane doesn't tolerate uncooperative prisoners. Shortly after, Bane introduces himself to Omega, dismissing her concerns about being rescued. He then contacts Prime Minister Lama Su on Camino, confirming Omega's capture, and the Prime Minister insists that she should be alive. Meanwhile, Omega convinces Todo 360 to let her help repair his leg. Using this as an opportunity, she disables the poor droid and retrieves her communication device. After Bane lands on Baro VO, he finds Omega missing, and Todo, to put it simply, is not in a very good state. Omega tries to contact the Bad Batch, who picks up her signal but can't trace it accurately. They instruct her to overload a door panel to reveal her location, but Bane catches her and destroys her communication device. So close, yet so far. As Bane drags Omega away, bounty hunter Fennec Shand ambushes him, as she's also after Omega, because why not add another player to this fun game? As they fight, Omega escapes and uses a transmitter to send another signal to the boys. They locate her in the Lido system and head straight to the destination. However, Shand corners Omega and explains that the Kaminoans' plans for her are worse than what Shand wants. Jeez, what did this kid do to deserve all this trouble?
Do not worry, I will recover the target. I will not fail you.
Meanwhile, Todo 360 barges in and tries to recapture her. But before that, she jumps on top of him and escapes in a flight pod. But the flight pod soon runs out of fuel. Luckily, the Bad Batch arrives just in time to rescue her.
Why is this happening? Why are the Kaminoans after me?
After reuniting with her brothers, Hunter reveals that she's more valuable than the other clones, which makes her a prime target for the Kaminoans. No wonder everybody wants a piece of her. Back on his ship, Bane discovers that it has been sabotaged by Shand, who reports to Nala Se that Omega is safe with the Bad Batch, and receives her payment. The episode ends with Omega expressing her fear of being recaptured, while Hunter promises to protect her from the Kaminoans. Don't worry, kid, Brother Hunter's got your back. Although, with their track record, who knows what kind of trouble they'll find themselves in next. Episode 14 starts with clone trooper Gregor being hunted by Imperial forces on the remote planet of Daro. He plants a beacon on a falling tree, but before he can escape, he gets captured and dragged away. Meanwhile, the Bad Batch receive a distress call from their former captain and friend, Rex, about Gregor's situation. Despite being on a different mission, they decide to help Rex out and head straight to the planet Daro, not knowing what awaits them. After reaching their destination, the crew start following Gregor's trail, while Hunter leaves Omega with Wrecker, as it's going to be a very dangerous mission. And little did he know, he was right, as they discover a massive Imperial facility with a lot of tin heads ready to take them down.
If there's a chance that trooper's being held against his will, we have to try to get him out.
Inside the base, they locate Gregor, but they end up triggering an alert leading to a gunfight with the Imperial forces. After getting cornered, Tech devises a plan to use the reactor opening for their escape. As they make their way through the base, they encounter resistance from the newly trained Imperial troopers. However, Omega and Wrecker come to the rescue as they pick up their friends. The Marauder comes under attack from starfighters, which forces Tech to make daring maneuvers, while Omega uses Gonki for more power. As Hunter tries to board the ship, he falls and orders the others to leave him behind. Omega pleads to turn back and help him escape, but it's already too late, as Hunter gets captured by the Imperial forces. Meanwhile, back on Camino, Vice Admiral Rampart confronts Prime Minister Lama Su for treason, revealing a deeper conspiracy within the Kaminoan ranks. Back in Daro, Hunter finds himself imprisoned, and he meets his former ally turned enemy, Crosshair, and we're left in suspense, not knowing if he's going to be able to make it back to his friends, or be turned into the next Crosshair. Alright, the next episode continues where we left off as Hunter finds himself captive, visited by his former comrade Crosshair. Crosshair hints at a larger plan, leaving Hunter guarded by elite squad troopers. Meanwhile, Echo and Omega are repairing their ship Marauder, determined to rescue Hunter. They receive a transmission revealing Hunter's relocation to Camino, which they find very confusing. Back on Camino, Hunter is brought to Tipoca City, and Crosshair meets with the Admiral, who asks him to take care of the other clones. The Marauder arrives at Camino's coordinates. With the help of Omega, they reach a hidden underwater platform, which leads to Nala Se's secret laboratory.
This type of underwater transport system is not documented on any schematics.
Meanwhile, Crosshair persuades Hunter to join him, while the boys, along with Omega, try to find Hunter's location. After locating him, Crosshair confronts the Bad Batch, offering them a chance to rejoin the Empire. However, the reunion is interrupted by rogue training droids, forcing a temporary alliance between Hunter and Crosshair. Whoa, didn't see that coming. As the battle intensifies, Crosshair's control wanes, leading to a Uno reverse card where Hunter offers Crosshair a chance at redemption.
I had my chip removed a long time ago.
Meanwhile, Vice Admiral initiates a devastating assault on Tipoca City, leading to mass destruction. The boys, along with Omega, run for their lives, carrying the injured Crosshair as the city is set to be brought to dust. The Imperial bombardment of Tipoca City was a sight to see for Rampart, as he gleefully oversees the destruction from his ship. Meanwhile, Omega, AZI-3, and Crosshair find themselves trapped in the sinking wreckage. Despite the danger of being crushed by debris at any moment, Omega tries her best to free Crosshair. However, after a brief struggle, Omega, along with the boys, manage to come out of the sinking cabin.
This is our room? Oh, what happened to it?
At least the smell's gone.
When they finally regroup in their old barracks, the boys just can't stop fighting, making things difficult for the group. Despite that, they decide to use the tube system to get close to the Marauder, and they successfully accomplish it not before a giant whale-like creature attacks them. And yeah, it's once again our boy AZI. Give this guy a medal, come on. After reaching Nala Se's lab, Tech proposes using the medical capsules to escape. And who helps again? Yeah, AZI, who's tasked with guiding them through the debris. However, just when everything seems to be going smoothly, Omega gets hit by a couple of debris and AZI runs in to help. The droid manages to save Omega, but unfortunately starts to drown as it has lost all of its power. Omega jumps into the water, but is quickly saved by Crosshair. When they finally emerge, fully battered but still alive, the ruins of Tipoca City shatter Omega's heart, as she sees the place where she grew up in ruins. Back to Crosshair, this guy is still adamant and refuses to join the Bad Batch, cause the dude has fully embraced his inner Empire's path.
Thank you for saving AZ.
Consider us even.
Before leaving, Omega says she still sees Crosshair as her brother, no matter what, as she leaves the place once and forever. Alright guys, with that, we end Season 1 of Bad Batch. Hold on, don't go anywhere, as we got the next 2 seasons covered as well. So without further ado, let's get the second season going. The first episode of season 2 kicks off with Echo, Wrecker, and Hunter pulling a mad dash to escape from the angry aggro crabs on a tropical island. Yeah, what a wonderful start to the new season. Meanwhile, back on the Marauder, Tech is helping Omega hit the books before being called upon after those crabs start attacking their teammates. After a struggle, they manage to reach back to the ship, with Hunter thanking Omega, but not before going into dad mode with a stay inside next time warning. She promises to try, while admitting she liked the heat of battle. Shortly after, the boys reach Sid's parlor, where they get an offer they can't refuse from that pirate, Fee Genoa. Sid reveals that their next mission is to loot Dooku's war chest from his place on Sereno. However, Hunter refuses the offer as he sees it to be too risky. Can't blame the guy for being cautious since Omega is around. However, Sid convinces the other teammates, forcing Hunter to take the mission.
It's unanimous. Even Killjoy over here agreed.
They reach Sereno, and Hunter volunteers to blow some stuff up as a distraction while the others start their search mission. While Hunter's busy getting his explosives on, the rest of the batch find the valuables they're looking for. However, things get a bit trickier when the captain of the troopers finds that one of his members is not responding. That's when Hunter decides to press the shiny red button, which destroys those flying ships, putting the troopers in complete chaos. With the troopers scrambling, the captain orders the cargo transport to be closed before it can get looted. However, Tech, Echo, and Omega are still trapped aboard in a container, forcing Wrecker and Hunter to find a way to get to their ship. The episode ends with Tech, Echo, and Omega in their pods, ready to crash land on the planet, hopefully without any injuries. We continue where we left off in the last episode with Omega, Tech, and Echo free-falling from a cargo container until the re-entry thrusters finally kick in. Meanwhile, Wrecker and Hunter are in stealth mode, sneaking through as they make their way back to the Marauder. The cargo container comes skidding to a landing right on the edge of a cliff. As our trio try to make their escape, Tech gets a nasty hit on his leg from a falling container. Meanwhile, Captain Wilco orders his squad of bucketheads to start looking for the infiltrators. Omega and Echo manage to pull Tech to safety, but Omega is determined to go back for that war chest. However, Echo insists that they first focus on getting the hell out of there. Yep, our boy definitely has his priorities straight. As Omega and the others get a message from Hunter and Wrecker, they find out that they've got an uninvited guest, Romar Adel. But Romar claims he's not working for the Empire, and Tech figures out Romar's home must be nearby. At Romar's home, he tells us that the war chest is nothing but bad news, as the ruler of the land, Dooku's insatiable quest for power led to the destruction of their whole city. He even offers Omega a kaleidoscope, teaching her that simple joys are worth more than any treasure. Right then, Echo steps out to do some spying, while Tech lends Romar a hand restoring an old data core containing precious Serenian history.
Now, if I can only get this thing working. Oh, I can handle that.
But our girl Omega has other plans, as she's still stubborn to retrieve that war chest. She goes down to the container, with Echo joining her just as the search squad approaches. Long story short, she loses her pack with the treasure, leaving her understandably upset, as they narrowly escape before the whole container goes tumbling off the cliff. The old man, Romar, helps Tech get back on his feet, but they spot another gunship inbound for an attack. This time, it's Tech's turn to shine, shooting down the gunship, while Romar lends a hand getting Omega and Echo to safety. Just then, the Marauder comes soaring in for the rescue, taking out the last V-Wing, leaving Romar as they fly off into the sunset. Back on the ship, Omega apologizes to Echo for her stubborn behavior, but Echo reassures her that taking her was the right call all along. Right then, we see Captain Wilco reporting to Vice Admiral Rampart about recovering about 85% of the war chest. But Rampart's not having any of that, and he demands that Wilco falsify his report to list Clone Force 99 as dead. However, Wilco stands his ground, refusing to follow his orders.
I will not falsify an official report.
Rampart loses his cool and blasts the poor Wilco right off the cliff. Episode 7 starts with a brave clone trooper spilling secrets to his buddy Slip about Vice Admiral Rampart's shady activity in the Camino's destruction. Despite Slip urging him not to, the trooper sends that daring message to Rampart, demanding that he come clean. But then, out of nowhere, a sniper's bullet takes down the trooper as Slip tries to escape from the scene. Meanwhile, the senators in the Imperial Senate debate the Imperial Defense Recruitment Bill, which proposes decommissioning the troopers. However, Senator Chuchi steps in and shows some heart for the troopers, as they had helped them in the war. Her empathy sparks a glimmer of hope.
As difficult as it is to accept, your military service will come to an end.
As Slip reveals that Rampart was the one who destroyed Camino City. In order to arrest Rampart and stop the Defense Recruitment Bill, she starts searching for Slip to get her hands on the juicy evidence. However, an assassin shows up, and their desperate escape leads to the killing of her bodyguards and Slip. Just when everything looked over and out for the senator, Captain freaking Rex shows up. Huh, it's a wild twist. Didn't expect him to come back. He brings the assassin to a repair shop,
Nice of you to join us. You got a name?
but the clone kills himself using a suicide shocker. Well, that was quite tragic and sudden. Well, things are gonna get pretty interesting as our boys, along with Omega, will get back in action. The episode kicks off with the crew taking a much-needed breather aboard the Marauder. Gonki's doing his usual Gonki stuff, wandering around, while Echo caught Omega meditating like a Jedi in training. Just then, Rex contacts the boys and informs them that he requires their help. Despite some hesitation, the Bad Batch jumps in and sets course to Rex's location. Touching down at a repair shop, they meet Rex and Senator Chuchi. From there, the group splits into two, with Omega going with the Senator, while the rest of the crew heads to capture evidence in the warship. Meanwhile, Omega takes the opportunity to follow Chuchi and get a glimpse of behind the scenes of the Senate. While the kid is strolling in the building, the rest of the batch infiltrate Rampart's Venator warship. Despite being outnumbered, they handle the situation and get out of that place. With the intel in hand, Chuchi confronts Lampert with evidence in the heart of the Senate. She exposes his crimes for all to see.
Stay back. I was following orders. I was following...
However, Emperor Palpatine steps in and uses the evidence as fuel for his stormtrooper elimination program, much to the shock of Omega and the gang. When the dust finally settles, Rex is frustrated with the Emperor, while Chuchi vows to keep on fighting against Palpatine's tightening grip. Meanwhile, Echo decides to stay behind and lend his tactical support to Rex.
Keep up with your training while I'm gone, huh? Understood?
The episode ends with a teary farewell between him and Omega, leaving the kid with a heavy heart as she joins the boys in the Marauder. Episode 11, Metamorphosis, starts with an abandoned ship just drifting through space, cloaked in debris like it went through a meteor shower. Inside, we've got a clone troopers running around with an electro staff as he goes into a hall with turbines. Something grabs him from above, and the next thing you know, he's gone. Back in Wayland, shuttles are escorting an Imperial transport, and out steps Dr. Royce Hemlock, who's greeted by the troopers. He storms out to see a very special guest, the Caminoan scientist Nalase, who's locked up tight. He tries buttering her up by praising her achievements, but Nalase refuses to cooperate in his project. Right then, Emery Carr informs him that they've lost contact with Transport 904, and Hemlock orders search and recovery teams to handle the transported assets. He also inquires about Caminoans who got off-world before Camino was destroyed. Meanwhile, the Bad Batch is cruising along in the Marauder when Omega and Wrecker start chewing out Sid for not helping after they lost their ship on a mission. But Sid reveals that she got a juicy tip for a downed vessel and offers 30% of the cut to our boys.
That is our standard percentage.
Alright.
However, they end up with a 50% cut as Sid gives in, saying it's a token of her goodwill. She gives them their next mission, and they arrive at a village on a planet, spotting a crashed ship looking surprisingly intact. As they start poking around the deserted ship, there's no sign of any crew, but Wrecker comes across an electro staff and some marks that definitely look like giant cat scratch marks. However, Hunter gets a hunch that they might be dealing with a very dangerous creature, so Tech decides to get the power back online and check the data logs up on the bridge. But as he's looking for a power cable, the rest of the crew discovers a whole lab full of Caminoan technology. Shortly after, the boys find reinforced walls lined with slime and stumble upon a Zillow beast just chillin' waiting for its next target. Right then, the beast roars, prompting Hunter and Wrecker to start shooting with their blasters. However, this only makes matters worse as the monster breaks out, heading straight for the nearby village. So Hunter and Wrecker give chase in the Marauder, hoping to stop it before it causes too much damage. But their blasters just seem to annoy this overgrown lizard rather than actually hurt it.
The species feeds on energy, which propels its rapid growth.
Just when you think the situation can't get any worse, Imperial forces show up. The villagers are in a full-blown panic mode as the Zillow Beast starts growing bigger and bigger after draining energy. The Imperial forces manage to catch the Zillow Beast and put it inside a large tank filled with liquid before returning back to the Tantiss base. Back aboard the Marauder, Tech informs the rest of the batch of some juicy intel about that crashed vessel being part of an Imperial cloning program revolving around, you guessed it, the Zillow Beast. And it turns out that the former Chancellor, now Emperor Palpatine, ordered the cloning way back during the Clone Wars. Meanwhile, Dr. Carr reports to Hemlock that they've successfully recovered the Zillow Beast. She also mentions that he's a guest today, the former Prime Minister Lama Su. He meets up with the former Prime Minister, who offers to help in return for his freedom. He reveals that in order to make Nalase cooperate, Hemlock needs to find Omega, describing her as the key to controlling the chief scientist. This episode is full of surprises, as we see our former Bad Batch member Crosshair still alive and kicking. He's hanging out at a spaceport as he watches new stormtroopers disembark, and also spot a trio of retired clones protesting their forced retirement. Then in comes Lieutenant Nolan, who asks Crosshair to put on his bucket as they're about to go to the most daring mission of all, guarding some cargo on a snowy planet. They touch down on the snowy planet Barton 4 and meet up with Commander Mayday. However, Mayday is not thrilled about the delayed supply ship, but Nolan, being Nolan, blames it all on Mayday. However, Mayday doesn't take that easily, and he hits back at Nolan. Turns out the Raiders have been messing with their sensors, and despite Mayday's request, no replacements have been sent. Suddenly, the comlink starts making noise as the Raiders have breached once again. Both Mayday and Crosshair rush to defend, with Crosshair taking up a sniper position. He shoots at a Raider, but their shuttle gets blown up, temporarily blinding our boy. Luckily, the Raiders' blood trail leads into the frozen wasteland and down a tunnel. Mayday also joins them, and they discover the Raiders have been using tunnels to bypass their defenses. Back at the depot, Nolan orders them to recover the stolen cargo on their own.
We don't have the manpower or gear for a mission beyond the perimeter.
They find the Raiders' hideout and launch a surprise attack, because who doesn't love a good old ambush? However, things didn't go exactly as planned, as the explosion causes an avalanche. But Mayday pushes him to safety. He quickly digs himself out and starts searching for Mayday as they manage to get back to the depot after battling intense freezing.
He needs a medic.
I see you didn't retrieve the crates.
When they finally make it back, Nolan refuses to help Mayday, considering him a waste of resource. Shortly after, Mayday breathes his last, and an enraged Crosshair puts a blaster bolt right through Nolan. Well, someone had to shut that guy up, and it looks like our Empire loyalist has had enough of the Empire. However, Crosshair collapses from exhaustion, and he wakes up in an operating chamber greeted by Emery Carr. She tells him to stay calm, before injecting him with some mystery liquid that puts him back to rest. Episode 14, Tipping Point, starts with 3 former clone troopers, including Hauser getting escorted onto an Imperial cruiser by some bucketheads under Captain Pierce's command. But just before the cruiser can make the jump to hyperspace, they get attacked by Echo and Gregor. Talk about a surprise attack. And these guys aren't messing around, as they quickly disable the cruiser's hyperdrive and board the cruiser with the whole team. Seeing the cruiser is going down in chaos, Pierce orders to erase the databanks, while Echo and his team secure the engine room and free the prisoners. Right then, a clone interrogates Pierce, who decides to take the easy way out, and bleepin' kill himself. As the Imperial reinforcements arrive, Echo grabs some data, and the clones make their escape before getting caught. Over at Mount Tantiss, our boy Crosshair is getting taken from his cell to an operating room.
Be smart and cooperate, or he will resort to methods you will not enjoy.
Over there, he meets Dr. Hemlock, who offers him freedom in exchange for the location of Clone Force 99, as he wants Omega for his mystery project. But Crosshair isn't having it, leading Hemlock to bring in an interrogation droid. Left with only Emery Carr, Crosshair manages to escape his restraints and skillfully shoots the guards down. As a final resort, he sends a warning signal, Plan 88, to the Bad Batch, before getting captured by Hemlock. Back in Pabu, the Bad Batch are enjoying their time with Omega, who's also taking flight lessons from Tech.
The collision alarms haven't gone off once.
Because it shorted out during your last lesson.
Right then, Echo arrives and explains that he needs Tech's help to recover the data from the Imperial ship carrying clone prisoners. The boys also come to know that a distress signal was sent by Crosshair, which they find strange, as Hunter's wary, thinking it might be a trap. Once again, Hemlock offers Crosshair freedom if he helps him secure Omega for his project, but Crosshair isn't budging, which prompts Hemlock to increase the drug levels, causing Crosshair even more pain. The next episode starts with the Bad Batch planning their next move, as Tech gives some much-needed info about the Advanced Science Division and Dr. Royce Hemlock. Okay, is it just me? Does that guy give off major supervillain vibes? Right then, Echo also drops the bombshell that Hemlock is set to attend a conference at Governor Tarkin's Raven's Peak compound on Eriadu, and proposes planting a tracking device to find Crosshair's location. Before they leave, Omega tells Phee Genoa about their mission, who also hints at some feelings for Tech, and asks him to stay safe.
Did you require a briefing?
Ooh, that's not gonna end well. Meanwhile, Hemlock sets his foot on Eriadu and meets up with Tarkin, who's joined by a bunch of other Imperial top dogs. There, Tarkin starts questioning Hemlock about his cloning advances, which Hemlock claims are crucial for creating their enlightened society. He even proposes the idea of using decommissioned clone troopers as his test subjects, which raises some concerns among the other top dogs. But Hemlock brushes them off, claiming that the clones are Imperial property. Meanwhile, the Bad Batch lands on Eriadu and makes their way towards Tarkin's compound. They bypass security sensors and hitchhike a ride on a rail carriage to their destination. In the hangar, Omega plants the tracking device on Hemlock's shuttle as Echo creates a diversion allowing her to escape. Some pretty quick thinking.
Another offline camera.
However, Tech finds something strange as he finds another deactivated quadrant and suspects that something might be up. That's when they run into Saw Gerrera and his followers, who plan to destroy the base. However, our boy Hunter tries to convince Gerrera to abandon his plan, but Guerrera's like, no way, man. To make matters worse, they get discovered by the troopers, and both groups make a run for their lives. The batch regroups and heads back to the rail line, while Gerrera activates his explosives. The explosion causes some serious damage, but Tarkin and the others manage to survive in their stronghold. However, the rail line loses power, and our boys, along with Omega, find themselves in a very precarious situation. As our boys find themselves under fire from the pesky bucketheads, Hunter orders Echo to get their ride moving again, but the explosions have knocked out the power, making it impossible for them to escape. However, Tech, being the genius he is, offers to reboot the system. As Tech makes his way to the top, Wrecker and Omega provide some much-needed firepower. After a struggle, Tech reaches the control panel and starts working his magic, while the others fend off those bucketheads. But of course, things are getting a bit too simple, aren't they? So Tarkin orders to take out the insurgents on the rail line with the help of air support. The V-Wing starfighters take to the skies, and Hunter spots them incoming, asking Tech to hurry up. As the fighters start striking them, Tech somehow manages to restore power, but not without taking some serious hits from those V-Wings. Tech ends up falling out of the carriage, clinging on with his life with a grappling cable. With metal bucketheads still shooting at them and the rail line starting to crumble, Hunter tells Wrecker to pull Tech to safety. But Tech warns that any shift in weight could send both carriages plummeting to the ground.
There is no time, Wrecker. Plan 99.
As more V-Wings close in, Tech makes the tough call as he proceeds with Plan 99 to save the team. He takes the shot and the carriage falls, taking him down with it. As the carriage goes down, the rest of the batch speed past the opposing railcar and crash into the next station. Omega wakes up injured and semi-conscious. However, Hunter and Wrecker come to her rescue, and in the next scene, we see Omega back at Sid's place. She wakes up with Hunter by her side, and AZI reassures her about her recovery. But when Omega asks about Tech, the mood takes a somber turn. So Hunter breaks it down that Tech is no more, and Omega breaks down in tears.
Tech's not gone. He can't be.
As Wrecker and AZI give them some space, Hunter comforts Omega, vowing that Tech's sacrifice won't be in vain. But of course, the chaos is never over for this group. At Sid's parlor, she's serving up drinks and offering her condolences for Tech. Yet something tells me that her sympathy is a little fishy. Meanwhile, Echo gets alerted by Gonki about an incoming Imperial Star Destroyer and finds out their comms are jammed. Back at the parlor, Sid finally comes clean that she betrayed the batch to the Empire. Right then, the clone troopers storm in, and despite Wrecker's best efforts, they manage to capture him. Hunter realizes the danger and orders Omega to make a run for it. Back in the parlor, Hemlock confronts Hunter and Wrecker. There, he taunts Hunter with Tech's goggles, demanding they hand over Omega, promising to set them free.
Consider it a gift.
However, Hunter refuses and is captured by Hemlock's troopers. Seeing her brothers, she tries to rescue them, but she ends up getting captured. Hemlock orders a search for the third clone, planning to take them all to Eriadu for some interrogation. Meanwhile, Echo and AZI hijack a giant robot and cause some chaos, allowing Hunter and Wrecker to escape. But they fail to stop Hemlock's shuttle from taking off with Omega. Back in Mount Tantiss, Omega is sent to Emery Carr for medical treatment, while Hemlock pressures Nala Se to cooperate, threatening Omega's safety. In the laboratory, Omega finds Crosshair along with the other clones, and the season ends with a shocking twist, with Carr revealing that she is Omega's sister. Alright, with that, we're moving on to Season 3, and the episode kicks off with the Imperial shuttle approaching the Tantiss base. The poor bucketheads flying the jet get clearance to land, but of course, the universe has other plans, as he, along with the stormtroopers, get struck by a lightning bolt. As if luck was by their side, they manage to survive the rough landing, and they immediately call the base for help. Right then, one of his buddies warns about the wild beast lurking around. Man, as if the crash wasn't bad enough. Meanwhile, back at the base, Dr. Hemlock is getting impatient waiting for the shuttle to show up. When he hears the troopers fighting those wild beasts, he decides they're as good as dead. He doesn't even bother sending backup. Shortly after, we catch up with our girl Omega, gazing out from her cell as her sister Carr shows up, convincing Omega that she'll get used to life on Tantiss. She leads Omega on a little tour through the corridors, passing by the imprisoned clone troopers, including Crosshair. Poor guy looks like he's been through a lot. In one of the wards, Emery collects blood samples from a clone trooper and also collects Omega's samples too, asking her to pass it on to Nala Se. After passing through the security, she meets Nala Se and her crew of droids working hard on who knows what. She thanks Omega for the blood samples, but then just tosses Omega's sample aside like it's nothing. She tells Omega to keep this whole thing a secret, and it's better that her sample is tossed aside. Right then, Dr. Hemlock shows up and takes away Nala Se for a small chit-chat. After taking Nala off to some vault, Omega goes to her tasks, which include serving up biscuits to the Lurka hounds. Later, Omega pays Crosshair a visit to discuss escaping from the hideout. However, Crosshair is skeptical and warns not to trust her sister Emery and to be on her guard.
Don't risk anything for me. I belong in here.
The next day, Omega discovers that her Lukra hound Batcher has been injured, and the sentry droid explains that the poor pup will be terminated if not treated. She asks the droid to do something, but he refuses. Not wanting to lose her pet, Omega decides to treat Batcher's wound without any help. The next morning, Omega faces a surprise inspection, and her sister confiscates Omega's Tuca doll, as apparently personal items are not allowed. Meanwhile, Nala reports her progress to Hemlock, who's not pleased and warns of consequences if things don't start moving faster. In the Lurka-hound pens, Omega is relieved to see that Batcher's wound is healing up nicely. But the droid tells her that Batcher is also set to be terminated due to her domesticated behavior. Hearing that, Omega fights the droid and frees Batcher, telling the poor pup to make a run for it. But because the universe loves chaos, she ends up getting caught red-handed by Hemlock. He threatens her that if she ever pulls such a stunt again, she might have to sacrifice Crosshair. Hearing this, she has no other option, gets escorted back to her room. Shortly after, Car comes to visit her, but our girl is in no mood to talk with her, so she leaves the room, not before giving her Tuca doll back. As Omega gazes at the sky for another night, she hears her dear Batcher howling in the background. So the next episode kicks off with Lady Issa Durand and her son Roland holding court trial in their fancy fortress. They've got this poor Deveronian captain on trial who says that he's innocent, but Lady Durand isn't having any of it, as she convicts the guy of conspiring against her family and activates a trapdoor, setting him plummeting into a pit. Next up, we see our boys Hunter and Wrecker make their entrance, dragging in a captive Pike who apparently disgraced the Durand family. He assures Lady Durand that this capture can't be traced back to them, and she accepts the gift. She acknowledges the risk the boys took in crossing the Pike Syndicate and asks what they need from her. Hunter explains that Dr. Hemlock has stolen someone valuable to them, which we know that's our girl Omega, and what information about it. So Roland provides the coordinates as part of their deal and wishes them luck as the clones leave the fortress. Back in their ship, Hunter and Wrecker start their journey and arrive at the jungle planet of Cetron. As they explore the ruins of what seems to be Hemlock's destroyed laboratory, they encounter two young clones, Deke and Stack. After knowing that they're not enemies, the boys explain they're survivors of an Imperial transfer gone wrong. The boys offer to guide them through the dangerous jungle, warning about genetically engineered slither vines that even attack Wrecker at one point. They eventually reach a safe spot and meet up with another survivor, Mox. He's understandably suspicious at first, but once he learns they're looking for Omega, he drops his guard. Shortly after, Deke, Hunter, and Wrecker venture back to the base to try and retrieve some data from the Destroyer laboratory. But little do they know that the two boys are planning to steal the Marauder to escape from the planet.
If we wait and the slither vines reach this ship, our chance to escape is gone.
Meanwhile, the group gets attacked by the vines, and with no other option, Deke calls for backup. And just when it looks like those vines are about to make a meal out of Hunter and his group, the boys arrive on time and help them deal with the monster vines. Back aboard the Marauder, Hunter analyzes the data they risked life to get, and it turns out Hemlock has moved his base again. Hunter promises to drop the cadets off somewhere safe, encouraging them to find their own paths beyond being soldiers. The episode ends with a handshake, as the camera pans to Omega's Tuca doll. Episode 3, Shadows of Tantiss, starts off with Car escorting Omega from her cell to begin her usual morning routine. She goes to the blood donation unit, where she notices an unusual amount of soldiers hanging around, so she tries to get some answers from her sister, but she brushes off all of her questions. Right then, Dr. Hemlock arrives on the scene with Nala Se, and starts blabbing about some unexpected visitor and orders Car to oversee the lab. Meanwhile, Nala Se is watching Car handle blood samples, including Omega's sample. When she gets a moment alone with Omega, she secretly warns that her life is in danger. She asks her to take her datapad and advises Omega to get out ASAP and never return again. Hearing this, she heads to the lab and sneakily steals the datapad and heads to Crosshair's cell. Meanwhile, a shuttle touches down on Wayland, and who should step off but none other than Emperor Palpatine.
Escaping, and you're coming with me.
Back inside the base, Omega uses the stolen datapad to free Crosshair and makes their way to the Hound Kennel. But Car confronts them before they can make their escape. When she refuses to help, Crosshair takes her down, and the duo make their escape from the hideout. Once the Emperor takes his leave, Hemlock gets to know about Omega and Crosshair's escape attempt. He orders the kennel sealed, but our duo manages to squeeze through in the nick of time. Wow, that was close. Meanwhile, Hemlock finds Car, who reveals that Omega used a datapad to orchestrate this whole breakout. He sends out a Lurka hound to track down the fugitives, and even has Nala Se detained, suspecting her involvement. The Imperial forces are hot on Omega and Crosshair's trail as they make their way through the jungle. She uses that handy datapad to navigate, and the duo finally stumbles across a downed Imperial shuttle. But to their surprise, the comms are dead. Oh man. The Imperial pilot picks up a surge in Sector 4, and Crosshair asks whether she knows about Plan 72, to which Omega says a big yes.
Tech had me memorize all the plans.
Of course he did.
As the stormtroopers start closing in, Crosshair engages them to buy some time for Omega to hijack the ship. Just when she was cornered by a stormtrooper, Omega's pet Batcher attacks the stormtrooper before she stuns the soldier. Finally, they manage to hijack the ship, but the V-Wing starfighters start attacking like there's no tomorrow. That's when Carr reports back to Hemlock that Omega's blood is tested positive for what they were eagerly looking for, the high M count. Wanting her alive, Hemlock orders the fighters to stand down as the duo make it into hyperspace, making their grand escape from the hideout. After their grand escape from the Tantiss base, Omega's eager to contact the rest of her brothers for a proper rescue, but Crosshair chimes in, saying that they need to fix up the ship's engines first. Of course, things can never go smoothly for these two as the stabilizers fail and they crash land on the planet Lao. Along with their Lurka Hound sidekick, Batcher, they set off towards the nearest spaceport. Meanwhile, back at Tantiss base, Dr. Hemlock is grilling Nalase about Omega and Crosshair's escape. However, Nalase plays dumb, which Hemlock isn't buying, and plans to test Omega again once they recapture her. Back on the planet Lao, Omega spots some bucketheads hanging around and asks if the Empires had found them yet, but Crosshair tries to play it cool, saying it's just a standard Imperial patrol. Despite Crosshair's concerns about Batcher being a liability, Omega insists on keeping it around. At the spaceport, they find all the entrances heavily guarded, so Crosshair wants to go bam bam bam, but Omega doesn't want violence and tries to bribe their way out.
Alternate way of booking passage without a chain code?
However, her plan fails as the ticketing agent demands 30,000 credits for 2 tickets, so Omega proposes they make up some cash at the local cantina. Inside, she gets a game going with a Trandoshan, only for Imperial Captain Man and his bucketheads to come bombastic after noticing her winning streak. Man kicks the Trandoshan out of his seat and challenges Omega. At first, Man seems to have the upper hand, but Omega pulls off a victory. However, Man extorts 10,000 credits from Omega, saying that gambling is prohibited. Once outside, Crosshair and Omega discover that Batcher is gone and learn that Man's bucketheads have taken it away. So they infiltrate the cargo docks and locate Batcher's crate. But now Omega wants to free all the poor animals locked up in there too. Crosshair's like, no way. In the end, Omega frees all the captive animals, causing a stampede which takes down all the troopers, including Man. Meanwhile, Crosshair manages to take control of a ship, and Omega takes off into the sky. After the crazy escape from Lao, Omega arranges a rendezvous with Hunter and Wrecker at Rylos' nearest moon, where the Marauder is waiting. And finally, Omega reunites with Wrecker, who gives a bone-crushing hug, and Hunter's relieved to see her back. She explains that she had a little help, and Crosshair emerges, as the episode ends with our boys and Crosshair having an intense stare-down contest. Episode 5 begins with our girl Omega walking up and strolling in as she sees Hunter and Wrecker, who are happy to have her back. Curious about where Crosshair is, Omega asks Hunter, who drops that he's still adjusting. She tries to play mediator and get Crosshair to chat with Hunter, but our boy's too focused on his training. She also suggests letting Izzy check his hand, but Crosshair's like, I'm good. Just then, they spot Echo's ship coming in, and Omega reunites with Echo, giving him a hug. Crosshair chimes in and cracks a joke about not getting a hug, and Echo's quick with a comeback. Later, Omega briefs Echo and the team about Tantiss base, mentioning she saw former clone troopers there, but not what's in the vault. She shows them Nalase's broken datapad, hoping it holds useful information. Hunter thinks it could reveal Tantiss base's coordinates, but Echo is skeptical, saying that it would be difficult to bypass Imperial encryption. But Crosshair reveals that he knows of a remote Imperial facility that could infiltrate and decrypt the datapad. Later that night, Omega helps load supplies, and Wrecker gives Crosshair his old gear, saying it didn't feel right to discard it, as Hunter watches him from the top. The next day, the Bad Batch start their journey to the snowy planet Barton, and they land near an abandoned Imperial depot.
Hey, it does fit.
However, Hunter finds out that the base isn't completely abandoned and asks Crosshair, who explains the sensors were meant to deter raiders. Inside, they find the depot's power depleted, so Omega diverts power from the sensors, and they learn that more clones are held at Mount Tantiss. As the sensors go down, Batcher grows anxious, and Crosshair steps out to investigate with Hunter. Meanwhile, Echo and Omega work on the data transfer as Hunter starts questioning Crosshair about his past. With no other option, Crosshair reveals that he killed an Imperial officer.
You're angry because she escaped with my help.
Their argument is interrupted by Batcher's barking as a giant worm emerges from the snow. They flee to the depot, realizing the sensors kept the creature away. In order to stop the worm from causing more carnage, the sensors need to be put online. So Wrecker goes to restore power, as Omega plans to reactivate the defense system. Meanwhile, Hunter and Crosshair work together to distract the worm, but Hunter falls into a tunnel, deciding to use it to lure the creature away. Luckily, Wrecker finds the fuse box as Crosshair and Batcher dig through the ice to rescue Hunter. And just in the nick of time, Wrecker reactivates the sensors, creating a sonic wave that drives the worm away. And with their mission complete, the clones reconcile, as Crosshair expresses regrets for his past. The episode starts with Rex playing tour guide for Separatist Senator Avi Singh and his droid GS-8. However, little do they know there's a clone assassin in the shadows, watching their every move and ready to take them down. They arrive at a safe house where Rex introduces Singh and GS-8 to Senator Rio Chuchi. Despite their rocky past, the two senators start chatting about the growing dissent against the Emperor. Meanwhile, the assassin starts taking out clone troopers left and right. However, Rex catches wind of the assassin and warns everyone about the threat.
We've got eyes on him. He's heading for the southern maintenance tower. On it.
Spoiler alert, Rex and his troopers win this round and take the assassin back to their hideout. Back in their base, Rex tries to get some answers out of the assassin, but the only response he gets is a nod when asked whether he's from Mount Tantiss. However, Hauser wants Rex to turn up the heat, because what's an interrogation without some action? They find a data puck on the assassin, revealing a hit list with Senator Singh and our girl Omega on it. So Rex, being the responsible leader he is, calls in Echo and Hunter. They greet the boys, and Rex reassures Hauser that Crosshair's on their side, but Hauser isn't buying it. Before leaving for his trip with Gregor, Echo gives Omega an energy crossbow, which she gleefully takes. Meanwhile, another clone assassin is hot on the trail, and he's assigned to take down the captured assassin. Rex introduces the Bad Batch to the underground clones and shares their plans to rescue the other clones from Tantiss base. After knowing about the target list, Crosshair spills the beans that Omega is valuable for the Empire. Hauser is skeptical of Crosshair and accuses him of treachery, but Crosshair insists he's telling the truth, and Omega drops a bombshell about the Empire using her to force Nala Se to cooperate for experiments. She mentions this M-Count project involving clone blood samples.
M-Count? You know what that is?
And Rex promises to get to the bottom of it. However, things are going to get crazier as the second assassin starts planting explosives around the base and spots Omega sharing a meal with Batcher and Wrecker. So he sends coordinates to the recovery strike team, letting them know Omega is here. As Hunter and Rex confront the captured assassin, he warns them about the Empire's imminent arrival. And the next second, boom. The explosions rock the base, and Rex, along with his clones, battle the intruder, but things take a turn for the worse when the flamethrower activates the thermal detonator, which makes a mess of the mess hall. Luckily, Rex manages to escape into the command room, because our boy's a cat with 9 lives, seriously. As the smoke clears, the assassin emerges unharmed, but his comlink is severely damaged. Meanwhile, Omega and the rest of the crew manage to make it out alive and escape through an underground tunnel. Meanwhile, Commander Wolf shows up with his bucketheads, and let's just say he's not too happy about the place being reduced to rubble. He's furious that the assassin went ahead and destroyed the base, despite orders to retrieve Omega safely. But the assassin swears Omega is still alive, so Wolf and his troopers start their pursuit. As Wolf's team breaches the tunnels, the assassin follows using a grappling cable. The clones make their way towards the leech ship, but the assassin attacks from a window and Crosshair counters with a detonator. They finally reach the vessel, but the assassin's long-range blaster damages its engines, and Rex is forced to crash land the vessel.
Stay close. It's easy to get lost in this terrain.
You're as bad as Hunter.
As they move forward, Hauser notices Crosshair's concern for Omega and questions his change of heart, to which Crosshair reveals that the Empire had let him down. Wolf's forces catch up. At Omega's suggestion, the rogue clones use smoke grenades, which confuses the bucketheads. They stun several soldiers, and Crosshair shoots down the Imperial ship, causing it to explode like a fireball. But out of nowhere, the assassin starts attacking the clones, and Crosshair volunteers to distract the assassin. However, Crosshair struggles against the assassin's attacks, but Hauser comes to the rescue, blasting the assassin. At the extraction point, Wolf arrives with his remaining forces and is surprised to find Rex alive. Seeing his old friend, Rex tries to reason with Wolf about the Empire, and Omega jumps in saying that the Empire is treating clones like trash. Right then, Echo arrives with his starship, and Wolf allows their escape, ordering his troops to recover the fallen troopers.
They're clones. We owe them that.
Back in the ship, Hunter apologizes to Rex for his fallen brothers and expresses doubts about winning against the Empire because, let's be real, the odds are never in their favor. But Rex remains committed to the fight and asks Hunter to uncover why Omega is important for the Empire's work on Tantiss. Episode 9, Harbinger, kicks off with Wrecker and Crosshair helping out a local to load up a fishing boat. Meanwhile, Hunter's irritated by the lack of response from the bounty hunter Shand, even after successfully completing the mission. While the boys are pondering their next move, Omega and Batcher decide to explore the rocky beach, and they stumble upon a mysterious starship. However, Batcher runs away and guides the Bad Batch to the cave where they find a mysterious woman confronting Omega. She reveals that she was sent by Fennec Shand, and she's got some juicy intel about the M-Count. So this woman, who we'll call Mystery Lady for now, starts spilling the beans about these M-Count beings and their ability to wield the Force like a true Jedi. However, she does clarify that a high M-Count doesn't automatically make someone a Jedi without proper training. According to Mystery Lady, the Kaminoans created millions of clones, but those with high M-Counts are a rare and valuable commodity for the Empire's experiments. Omega jumps in, asking whether this is the reason why the Empire is after her. She requests to be tested for her M-Count, so the Mystery Lady decides to put Omega through a series of tests.
Come on, Omega! You can do it!
But when Crosshair catches wind of her identity from the Republic archives, the boys start getting a little suspicious about her intentions. As Omega struggles with the tests, Ventress sends her off to retrieve a white blossom, and the boys start fighting her. But Ventress quickly overpowers the clones with her combat skills, makes it clear she's not their enemy. However, the clones are distrustful, but Omega asks them to give Ventress a second chance. The next day, Omega and Ventress venture into the sea, where Ventress teaches Omega about the Force's connection. But their lesson is interrupted by a sea monster, which capsizes their boat. Fortunately, Ventress manages to calm the beast using her Force powers. After all the test, Ventress concludes that Omega doesn't have a high M count. However, Crosshair is skeptical and doubts Ventress's assessment, to which she explains that if she did have the potential, she might have to leave the Bad Batch. She also warns that staying on Pabu isn't safe. Well, when has anyone ever been safe with these guys? She urges them to carefully consider their options as she departs using her spaceship. So then, the next episode starts with the pirate chick Fee Genoa and her robotic sidekick landing down on a lunar base for refuel. While Genoa is hitting up the station shop for probably some snacks and souvenirs, the assassin sneaks onto Genoa's ship, gets his hands on Omega's location through the navigation computer. Not gonna lie, this assassin is a smooth operator. Back in Pabu, the guys, along with Omega, are packing up their gear as they say goodbye to their friends. However, Omega's feeling a bit down about leaving. She's got high hopes that they'll be back. However, little do they know that the assassin has already landed on Pabu and is setting up an ambush. This assassin ain't playing around, as he finds Omega and blows up the Marauder. As the Imperial force starts closing in, Omega starts feeling guilty about the whole mess, as she's the one indirectly responsible for it. However, Hunter cheers her up, saying that it's the Empire's fault, as they're the ones after her. Meanwhile, the assassin's making some not-so-friendly demands, as he threatens to destroy the island if the locals don't hand over Omega. The Imperial troops start rounding up civilians and prepare to torch the buildings.
Our only choice is to let them capture me.
What?
And that's when Omega steps in to surrender to the assassin, asking him to leave Pabu alone. She gets taken aboard the assassin's ship, but not before Crosshair tries and fails to plant a tracking device as he watches in frustration. Episode 12, Juggernaut, starts off where we left off, as the assassin touches down at Tantiss base with Omega as his captive. They get a warm welcome from Hemlock, who wastes no time removing Omega's restraints and leads the girl straight to the central lab. He orders Carr to test Omega's M count, who is now responsible for taking care of the central lab. But Carr, who's a bit hesitant at first, agrees and plays along like a good little scientist. Omega tries to reason with Carr, who's still torn between doing the right thing and, well, not doing the right thing. Back on Pabu, the boys regroup after the Imperial forces have taken away Omega. At first, Wrecker is annoyed that Crosshair allowed Omega to surrender, but Crosshair counters, saying that it was the only way to prevent more chaos. With their Marauder in pieces and no clue where this Tantiss base is, Crosshair suggests that they track down former Vice Admiral Rampart, as he might just have the coordinates. Despite their rocky past, Crosshair figures Rampart is their best shot. But just then, Fee Genoa pops out from the hidden trapdoor with AZI, who agrees to lend a hand.
Any friend of Brown Eyes is a friend of mine. Where are we headed?
They manage to land near a suspension bridge leading straight to the labor camp's doorstep. After taking out a couple of the bucketheads, they hack into a terminal to locate Rampart. And turns out the guys have been working his rear off in some pretty harsh condition. Hunter comes up with a plan to intercept Rampart during his transport, and the group sneaks aboard the turbo tank. They take out the guards and find their target Rampart, who recognizes Crosshair. They ask about the details of the Tantiss base, but Rampart refuses to answer and agrees to help only if they get him off the planet. Unfortunately, the Warden catches wind of the hijack and sends troops to catch the boys. As the transport nears the cliffside, Genoa's ship swoops in to provide a much-needed assist. With Rampart under their custody, they pressure him to spill the intel. However, he admits saying that he doesn't know Tantiss' coordinates, but he's got a plan to get around that. Back at the lab, Carr finds out that Omega has a high M count, and Hemlock isn't surprised, as he explains that Omega is unique and is the key to his project. He takes Omega to the vault and shows them a room full of Force-sensitive children, leaving Omega telling her that it is her new home now. As the bells chime, Omega and the other Force-sensitive children come out from their room and take their seats inside the vault room. She introduces herself to the Iktachi girl Eva, who mentions that Dr. Carr is the only nice one around, who even gave her Omega's Tuca doll. Back in Borovio, Rampart questions Hunter's destination choices as Echo rolls up bringing supplies in his stolen Rho-class shuttle. He also reveals that ships headed for Tantiss have to dock first at Imperial stations, orbiting Coruscant to get their coordinates to Tantiss. Hunter proposes a plan to infiltrate the station to get the coordinates of the hideout. However, Echo chimes in saying that they'll need Imperial clearance codes, which luckily, he's got covered. Rampart warns that those codes aren't enough for them to go unnoticed, so Hunter decides to disguise Rampart as an Imperial officer, with the rest of the clones acting as his security.
I was a Vice Admiral?
Well, you've been demoted.
Back at Tantiss, Dr. Carr comes in for her regular sample collection and prepares to take a blood sample from Omega. However, Omega uses it as a distraction and steals an instrument while the medical droid collects her sample. She talks with the other kids, getting the inside information about the droid and trooper patrol movements, vowing to bust out again and take all of them with her. As the shuttle approaches Imperial Station, Rampart suits up in his captain's uniform while the boys disguise themselves as Imperial troopers. But an Imperial officer questions their arrival, but Rampart uses his Vice Admiral's skills and even threatens to talk with Tarkin. That gets Mr. Beardo to back off in a hurry. They encounter some bucketheads in the corridor, but Rampart quickly dismisses them by saying out his blah 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 protocol, which frightens those poor guys. Once in, Echo starts doing his work as he discovers a vessel departing for Tantiss. So Hunter proposes hitchhiking the vessel while Echo disables those proximity sensors.
Wonderful. We're all going to die.
Luckily for them, Echo manages to do that just in time. With the sensors offline, the shuttle successfully latches on before the jump. And with that, they're going to Tantiss, baby. Episode 14, Flash Strike, continues where we left. Rampart warns that the Imperial scanners will sniff them out, so Hunter chimes in suggesting to detach the vessel from before re-entry. Back in the Tantiss base, Hemlock receives an update from Clone Commander Scorch about the science vessel situation, and Scorch also spills the beans that Clone Force 99 infiltrated the orbital station with Rampart's help. So Hemlock wastes no time in sending starfighters to patrol the airspace. As the Bad Batch's shuttle makes its descent into Wayland's atmosphere, they detach from the science vessel as 3 Imperial V-Wing fighters show up. Inside the Tantiss vault, Omega, Eva, Sammy, and Jax hear the sound of laser fire, which Omega instantly recognizes as her brothers coming to the rescue. Meanwhile, Dr. Carr orders to go down into lockdown mode and asks Dr. Skulder to safeguard the captive children. Right then, Hunter sets the shuttle to autopilot, while the rest of the gang descend into Wayland's lush jungles using cables. After knowing that the ship has been hit, Hemlock sends a patrol team to sweep the crash site, while Scorch informs him about the incoming science vessel. In the jungle, Crosshair lays out the game plan to maintain calm silence while making their way toward Tantiss base. Omega takes advantage of the chaos and crawls into the dumbwaiter system in her cell. Back in the jungle, the boys and Rampart sneakily escape from the patrolling bucketheads as they move closer to the base. Unfortunately, Rampart had a close encounter with a big furry creature who doesn't take too kindly and starts attacking the gang. The beast hurls Wrecker against a tree trunk, and the clones are forced to retreat. In the chaos, Rampart gets separated and wanders right past an Imperial patrol. The clones end up crossing paths with the stormtroopers too, and the gunfight begins. Back in the vault, Jax is getting worried, wondering what's taking Omega so long to return back. Right then, Sammy alerts the others of the arrival of a medical droid and the scientist. The droid orders them to go back to their rooms as the kids are visibly panicking.
Skulder, I don't feel very good.
Meanwhile, Omega uses the dumbwaiter tubes and is surprised to find the Zillow Beast enclosure. While Skulder runs tests on the other kids, Omega returns to her cell just in time, like nothing happened. As Echo finds his way to the central lab, he comes face to face with Dr. Carr, who calls him out saying that he's not authorized to enter the laboratory. But our boy plays it cool, claiming it's all part of a special security protocol. However, Carr notices Echo's prosthetic hand and calls him by his name, Echo. She introduces herself as Emery Carr, and Echo reveals that they're not only here for Omega, but to free all the prisoners. Meanwhile, Omega gathers the other kids to reveal she's found something big, and with that, the episode comes to an end. As a whole squad of gunships is swarming right outside the Tantiss base, Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair are pushing hard through the dense jungle as they're getting closer and closer to rescue Omega. Inside the base, Hemlock is ordering his bucketheads to guard the vault, and Commander Scorch chimes in with some juicy intel that they've managed to catch an insurgent. Well, that insurgent is none other than Rampart, and Hemlock can't resist but mock Rampart for his actions. However, Rampart questions what's so special about Omega, but Hemlock swiftly shuts, saying that he's more valuable to the Empire, unlike him. Over in the central lab, Carr warns Echo to keep a low profile, and Echo is surprised to know that she is offering to help him. Meanwhile, Omega is busy briefing her new friends about her Crane's escape plan. The kids are a bit hesitant at first, but with no other option, they jump in. They work together to disable the medical droid and reprogram the bot, which attacks Skulder. Shortly after, Omega and her friends reach the enclosure, and Omega unleashes the Zillow Beast, setting the whole place into chaos. Meanwhile, Crosshair is busy scouting ahead, while poor Wrecker is nursing injuries from the earlier fight. Seeing that, Crosshair volunteers to go solo, but Hunter and Wrecker aren't having any of that lone wolf nonsense. Back in the now-wrecked facility, Omega guides the kids to temporary safety. But Hemlock isn't going down without a fight as he prepares his elite Clone X troopers for the battle. With the help of his elite troopers, Hemlock captures Hunter and plans to reprogram him and the other clones as his own personal Clone X army. Omega meets up with Echo, and Carr leaves with the children. Right then, Echo and Omega are busy busting out prisoners left and right, including Nala Se, Rampart, and the other imprisoned clones to get ready for a fight.
I've got one more fight left in me.
Me too. I'll stand with you.
However, Nala Se has got other plans. She's dead set on destroying every last piece of data of her research to ensure that it never falls into Imperial hands. During her way to the laboratory, she finds a detonator. However, much to her surprise, she's sneakily followed by Rampart, who wants her to tell the secrets of the Project Necromancer. He threatens her at gunpoint, but Nala Se counters that the knowledge belongs only to the Caminoans, as she does the unthinkable by dropping the activated detonator, killing her and Rampart. Meanwhile, Echo, Omega, and the clones are forced to battle their way towards the training room, where they encounter fierce resistance from Hemlock's elite Clone X Trooper squad. She frees her brothers, who start fighting the super clones. However, Hemlock takes Omega away, planning to escape from the base, but not before releasing the toxic gas. As he gets tracked down by Hunter and Crosshair, Hemlock tries to use Omega as his hostage to escape, but the Bad Batch ain't having any of that, as Crosshair perfectly locks in with a perfect sniper shot. Unfortunately for Hemlock, he takes a fall into the abyss as Omega finally reunites with her brothers. They escape from the facility, and shortly after, Tarkin rolls up to survey the devastation at Tantiss base. He immediately stops Hemlock's funding and diverts resources to Project Stardust. Meanwhile, our boys and Omega are back at Pabu along with Dr. Carr, who's pleased to see the children happy. After a few years, we see Omega all grown up, as she says goodbye to Hunter to join the rebellion as a pilot.
Keep an eye on Wrecker and Crosshair while I'm gone. Betcha too.
And with that, the series comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, comment down below the name of that one Star Wars series that is very close to your heart. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.